Welcome to Cosmic Brilliance, folks. This show will be lots of fun with my returning guest, Apollymi Mandylion, who wanted to share the truth about dragons. And who better to share the truth than someone who is a dragon herself? So, for those of you that are new to Cosmic Brilliance, Apollymi is a dragon, Fae Hybrid with multiple abilities. And due to her very busy schedule, both on and off world, which is an understatement, we are fortunate to have her on a show together once a month. But first, she really wanted to share with you, and I wanted her also, before we get into the topic of dragons, about a lot of the positive things and updates that are going on our world and in the universe. This is going to be a real treat and uplift your spirit. So, Apollymi, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I can do that. And thank you so much for having me back on the show, Merrily. I absolutely love being here. I'm my schedule's just been so busy. I'm sorry we're not able to, do it more often.
Understandable. Understandable. It's just a gift to have you. So, give us some galactic updates and universal updates.
So about 3 weeks ago, I started getting pulled into multiple meetings. It's been a very long 3 weeks of back-to-back off-world meetings. We've had creator meetings and universal collective meetings and galaxy meetings. Everything is just kind of going down the board here. And there's a lot that has been going on. I know a lot of people have been contacting me and telling me that they're feeling a lot of shifts happening. The timelines are changing, all of this stuff. And after all the meetings that I've been going through, the answer is yes. Uh,
In a good
we're
way.
in a good way, and hopefully it stays that way because during the Universal Council meeting, there was a lot of finger pointing, and somebody may or may not have pointed out a lot of the culprits who have been doing nothing but messing up this entire universe, going against binding contracts for creators on laws that have been completely broken that should have never have been broken. Things have been put into play where these people are starting to get apprehended and dealt with. So hopefully we will be on nothing but good timelines from now on, as it's going to be a little chaotic getting everything sorted out. So everyone strap yourselves in and get ready for a wild ride. But yeah, it's been really entertaining for me anyway to watch justice finally starting to rear its head and be served.
And by the way, folks, Apollymi had a lot to do with that. And she has never ever been so busy with Universal and Galactic Council meetings ever. So I have heard this across the board with some high tier beings, and so that tells you a lot is going on, and a lot of accountability, and a lot of things are changing.
I've also been to Starseed Council meetings, which has a lot to do with Earth. I am not allowed to talk about too much what's happened there. All I have to say is for those of you who are doing your ascension, keep it up. Please keep it up. And for those of you who have not done your ascension, if you are planning on doing it, now is the time. Do not put it off any longer. So it is something that you have to do on your own and choose to do on your own. No one can force it. The planet's vibrations of the consciousness rising will make it easier, but you're not just going to pop into conscious existence for ascension. So ride that wave if you're already on it, and get on that surfboard, people, if you haven't already. That's all I can say.
And folks, we've done many shows together all around Ascension to help guide you through that and understand that. So it is a top priority for most beings who choose that on this planet at this time, for sure. Thank you so much for those positive updates, and I'm thrilled to hear that. So let's begin the magical world of dragons. And Apollymi is one of the top experts at it, even though she's very humble with what she knows and has personal experiences, which you will be hearing about. So this might end up in two parts because there's a lot to share. And let's start from the beginning of where do dragons come from?
So we are going to go beyond this universe all the way to a place called Central Universe or Hanova. This is where the Immortal Seven reside. They are the creator council of all the omniverse and all of the multiverses. And if you think about Hanova as a sphere that has all frequencies in existence, okay, like all the frequencies in existence, and
Wow.
then they exist simultaneously all in one. So you're not interacting on different dimensions, like all the dimensions are interactable in one spot.
Wow.
For the Immortal Seven, they use these as a place of creation. And so there are certain templates, we'll say, like genetic templates that are used. And each Immortal Seven basically has their own dragons that they have created. I'm just going to go over a very small few that I personally know and have interacted with enough to get information that I can remember from being over there. So they use these templates that have like various genetics. Okay, so if you get your DNA done, it's a genetic template. So you have all of your chromosomes and all your quirks and personality traits and just the very genetics that make up your being, how you look, how you act, how you interact with your environment. And there are many, many different species of dragons in Hanova.
To be clear, so on Hanova, you were saying there are a certain number of templates for species, and that was the original creation. And all those templates incorporate all dimensions and frequencies, right? Is that what you're saying so far? So, is this true that the diversity of other species or hybrids increases outside of Hanova due to experimentation like our universe? It's an experimental universe.
Yes, that's correct. So the templates that Hanova has for these dragon species is very complex. However, because of the creational laws that are set down in Hanova, there's only so much that can be done. And so when we get outside of the Hanovian universe into the smaller universes or smaller omniverses, it allows for more evolution to happen. So if you have a universe, this universe over here has 15 different frequencies of its creation. And then you have a universe over here that has maybe 55. The difference of evolution is going to be so vast because of the creational frequencies. And for those of you who know about frequencies, it like the cymatics, okay? You can experience different evolutions through the different shapes of those frequencies. And so it's going to diverse things a lot compared to what can happen in Hanova. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's the purpose for experimental universes and worlds, right?
Right, because the laws in Hanova are very, very, very strict. So you're only allowed to do certain things. And with experimental universes, the laws are a little bit more relaxed. This one is an understatement, and there's almost no laws. So there's a lot of things that can happen in this one. But it allows for a lot of diversity to happen and change. And even if the creators of those universes decide to take some of the templates from Hanova, the evolutionary change throughout the universe's existence, it can be so different and never again repeating itself to any other universe created.
Fascinating. Right, because creation doesn't want just Xeroxing itself. That's not the purpose, right? It's for maximum evolutionary growth, correct?
Right. And so even though it tries to get back to source for the template, it will never actually be able to fully repeat itself perfectly. And so that evolution happens. And dragons are very, very close to source itself. So that's why when it keeps trying to repeat, it never can fully do that, because it doesn't, the universes will never have the same full template as the one from Hanova.
Okay, and I believe you said in another show that none of the lessons learned here or species go back to Hanova or get incorporated into Hanova, because Hanova already has all that it's designed to have. Is that correct?
For the lessons,
Well, like diverse species, other species, opportunities, what we learned, what we were successful at in experimental worlds. Does that get back incorporated into Hanova?
so the creators have an understanding and files of all that, and some of it might get incorporated to new species in Hanova, but things are never really, how do I put this? You don't take one motherboard from one computer and put it into another. It doesn't work very well like that. So the ideas can be transferred, but the only thing that transfers fully would be the conscious collective of the lessons learned and the like experiences through everybody. That's the only thing that ever gets fully transferred over there. But the species diagnostics and everything else, like, that has to do more with the creator councils and their decisions on things.
Thank you so much. That's never been clarified and really, really important. So let's get into what are the specific dragon species in Hanova, the first creational universe.
Right? So from the information that I have, the prismatic dragons were the very first dragons of the creation in Hanova. And they are from one of the Immortal Sevens themselves, so they're a first tier creation. The prismatic dragons were the first ones in existence of Hanova. They can be black hide or white hide, and they have this very much prismatic iridescence on their stomachs and their wings. Some of them have been known to have multiple wing sets, like up to 3 on their backs. Some of them have 2, some of them have 1. Even though they have different wing sets and hide coloration, they're still considered prismatic and still of the first tier. So their wings are leather, their hide is leather, they don't have scales. That will go into the scale part later. Their body structure is kind of a mix of a European and an Asian dragon. So they have like the long bodies of an Asian dragon, but they have more of the facial features of the European dragons, along with the tail. Like, if you guys have seen my my description of my dragon picture, yeah, they're a little bit longer in the torso than this one. This one's just a hatchling. But they have a longer torso and a longer neck and a longer tail, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. So, not that I'm like hinting at anything, but Their eye color can vary. They can have from blue to purple to green. They're just absolutely gorgeous. They have the ability to have what I call the golden spiral and silver spiral. Anyone who knows sacred geometry should know these terms. The golden spiral is the outward push of energy of creation, and the silver spiral is basically the opposite. It kind of is like a black hole where it kind of drags everything in. They're one and the same in the aspects of the whole energy sharing, like everyone has them. And they have the ability to manipulate these. The prismatic dragons were basically made to help govern all of the energy and the weave, basically, of existence in Hanova, along with a few of the other dragons, which I'll be talking about. So they do make up part of the High Dragon Council in Hanova, which is awesome. So the prismatic dragons can easily be mistaken for what we call the light dragons, because the prismatic dragons do have the ability to produce a light aura around them, where they're just shimmery and they can strobe like rainbow orb colors, if you ever see one in Hanova, because you don't really need to breathe in the dead of space in Hanova, because we don't need spacesuits or anything. They just help us look cool. Uh, pretty much. But you can see these dragons, and they're very big. They're very huge. You know, they can be very much the size of moons, if not larger, depending on how old they are. I don't know too much about their like life cycles, because in Hanova you don't really die unless you want to. So I do know that they hatch from eggs. I don't know how long it takes them to become mature or to become old.
So that is the prismatic dragon. And what is their primary function?
So again, their primary function is to basically help govern the creational energies of Hanova, to make sure that the rules are kept, to make sure that the flow and ebb of the golden and silver spiral is in balance. And they're not the only ones. They are a tier 1 dragon, but there are others that are tier 1 dragons that also help in that, and they're considered one of the first dragons in the Great Dragon Council in Hanova. This is the celestial dragon species that I continuously talk about because I do have a kinship to them. They are created from a second tier creator in Hanova. So you have the Immortal Seven, and then you have the creators below that. And again, none of the creators are blind of who the Immortal Seven are. All the creators that have passed their tests to be creators know who the Immortal Seven are, and they have to sign contracts and all this other stuff. So this is from a second tier creator for this dragon species. I consider them a celestial dragon species because not only of their looks, but their energy type. They're a very high golden spiraled celestial energy. And they are just absolutely fascinating. These ones look like humanoid elves when they are younger, and they take this form because their creator is like this elf, very tall elf being, but she has very golden antlers on her head, and she's very pretty. But she's not a dragon, because your creators don't have to be the same species as you. So for some reason, she thought that the elven form would be more appropriate when you're younger. An interaction with your environment in a humanoid elven form, or humanoid form in general, it allows you to do things and manipulate your environment differently than just being in a pure dragon form on all fours. You might be able to stand up and do things, but it's a lot different. So as babies and children, and they usually give egged birth. Okay, it's not like, and I know that sounds weird for a humanoid giving egged birth, but they give egged birth, and then a baby elf comes from the egg. So
Oh.
it's a little weird, but so they hatch from eggs. They are humanoid, they're elven. And then as they get older, they start getting more of their draconic features when after basically their first molt. And then a little bit even more after that. The species usually has crimson red hair with true metallic gold highlights, and they have gold nails. Their skin is very pale. Their eye colors, again, can range from like blues and greens, purples. You know, it's just very, very pretty. And none of their species really, like, they always have crimson hair. There's no diversity in that at all. The only thing that really changes is their eye color. So when they turn into their dragon form after they hit puberty, basically, or they go through their molting process, which we will talk about later on in the show, they start to get their antlers, which is a very itchy, very annoying process, and you basically start rubbing your head on everything. Uh, I'm not talking from experience or anything.
Sure.
Mhm. Most of them will actually start to get their wings around this time as well because they're not born with them. And when they start turning into their actual dragon form, that's usually when they get their wings. Yeah. So this is what I looked like in Hanova, except for the coloration and the wing type and the tail type. But the overall general body type is how I looked. There are very few children, like once, I think it was like once every 100 to every 500 years in Hanova, or generations, a child would be born with more draconic features. I ended up getting more features like this. There was another child born a couple hundred years before me who was a full dragon already, which was really rare. And it's still a little weird growing up with all the features. But normally when you go through your molting process, you'll transform into your full dragon form. And that's when you get your wings, and you know, your antlers will start to grow. When you transform back into your elven form, the how do I put this? When you molt for like a week, and then you're stuck in that dragon form. And then after that, you transform back into your elven form, and then you can choose to transform back into your dragon form whenever you want. It's still very painful to get to that form. You get used to it, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But how do I put this? But the antlers come in, and it takes months, if not, your antlers continue to grow like constantly, and you don't shed them like most animals. No, you keep them. So when you transform back into your elven form, you get to keep your antlers the same height and width and everything as you would when you transform into your dragon until you get bigger. It's really annoying. The antlers are part of the natural species. Both males and females have them. It's just part of our blueprint design, really. But they are made out of a gold keratin.
Interesting.
Yeah, just like our claws and the ear tip spikes and our wing spikes. It's all the same stuff. So, you know, when they start growing, you know, you generally have to up your intake of gold to actually ingest it, because to our species it's not poisonous, it's not a heavy metal, we don't get brain damage, which is good. But yeah.
So it's not necessarily used as antennas or defense or anything. It's just a natural attribute.
Yeah, it's just a natural attribute. I mean, so we have ears on the top of our head that are about like right here, and our antlers actually are right here, and they actually kind of go in and then out and then come around. But they're
Like spiral.
it's a weird mixture between, like, you know how the horns curve like on a moose almost, and like an ibex, not an ibex, like a ram, the celestial dragons. So they have pretty good healing factors. They can regenerate pretty quickly. They have very skilled empathicness and telepathy as well. So we don't necessarily have to speak, but we always have a verbal communication. They have pretty good elemental control over just the base elements.
And does that mean weather, elemental control, when you say base elements? What does that mean?
So
Like
base elements is, your matter, your uh,
water, fire.
yeah, water, fire. That's not how we pronounce it up there, but so it takes a lot of your control to control the weather. And you're not technically supposed to do that in Hanova unless you have contracts that you're taking care of land, because obviously controlling the weather messes up a lot of things. you know you have to understand the way that the wind currents work on the planets that you're on. You're not really allowed to take control of the weather when you're in space, because most of the stuff is galaxies, or nebulas that people are housed in. There's a lot of rules, but they do have the ability. It's just whether or not they can do it by rules. Now here in this universe, yes, they would have the ability to control the weather. They have a little bit of psionics, where they can move things with their mind. They have the ability to control elements like fire and rock and that sort of thing. Not so much like I'm moving mountains, but it depends on their skill set on how big of a piece of rock or brick that they can move.
And they would be invisible to most of us, right?
They do come from a very high frequency. So they would have the ability to shift their energies to where humans could not see them, but humans can only see such a small spectrum anyway. It's not hard. There are several different versions of the black dragons in Hanova where they have black hide, one of the prismatic species being one of them. This species is not prismatic, it is another type. I'm not allowed to give the name. They are created by a third tier creator in Hanova, which means that their creator is third down from the Immortal Seven. So these black dragon species, they are kind of like the counterpart to the celestial dragons. They have the ability to turn into dragons at a young age, although what age that is, I don't know exactly. Their dragon forms are very grand in size. They are not as big as the celestial dragon species. The celestial dragon species can become, their adult forms are basically like galaxies here in this universe. Hanova is huge, vastly huge. So it's nothing over there for a dragon to be that big. The biggest one that I have seen was about 20 feet tall. They're pretty big. And that was also kind of here in this universe because they've some of them have transferred over here. These guys would have come from Hanova over here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they're of their own lineage.
Okay.
But there is speculation that a lot of the black dragons may have came from these guys. For some of them, not all of them.
Are they related to the void dragons, or is that a whole different thing?
No, they're completely different species.
Okay.
So these dragons, these black dragons versions, they're more European, what people would consider European style dragons, but they have plate armor on them. And they're very rigid, very hard plated. It is very hard to get through the hide of one of these dragons. They do have hide on the outside, but their plates literally make them look like they're wearing armor, which is really cool.
Hmm. Hmm. So are they warrior oriented?
These ones are definitely warrior oriented. Their entire species is also a little bit military factioned,
Okay.
just for like structure and hierarchy and that sort of thing. They do breathe a red fire. These black dragons have just normal, typical wings that are made out of leather. They are also very strong. They are incredibly good flyers. Most of these dragons actually have planets that they reside on versus just floating in the midst of Hanovian space, as you would call it. So their flight skills are a lot better just because they have more gravity to work with.
Hmm. Interesting.
And their eye colors can vary from red to orange to yellow. Sometimes every now and then you'll get like a purple. And
Okay.
then we have the other version of black dragons, which is the void dragons. This is a first tier creation Hanovian on the silver spiral basis. So these dragons are also part of the High Council dragons in Hanova. They help maintain the balance of the creation energies. So void dragons are particularly black scaled. They have scales. Um, some of them have hide for the later renditions. This allows them to blend into the darkness seamlessly. They literally just if there was no nebula or anything like that and they were just floating in the dead of space in Hanova, you wouldn't be able to see them. You might run into them and not know that they were there.
How big
But
are they?
they are huge. Like they can be the size of galaxies as well. These creatures are ginormous, or at least when there are the older ages. Again, their role is to keep that balance, and the higher tier ones always seem to have a bigger, like a bigger, grander size when they get older. Their abilities are basically kind of like the black holes where they take and they can take and manipulate the silver spiral to recycle energy so that it is ready to be used by the other dragons I'm about to talk about, for recreating energy into the grand scheme of the essence and source flow of Hanova. So they can emit a breath that most would be considered a black hole. This helps them to recycle the energy. It helps recycle molecules and everything that gets broken down. That would literally just go back into the source creation frequencies.
Oh.
They have great control over gravity, and most void dragons are serpent-like in body structure. So you would really, so I guess the Asian dragon type would be more appropriate. They have smoother snouts though at the end instead of like the wider ones that you would see like in China. Just referencing. So, and then they do have a little bit of a mane on the side, and the rest of it is just, for the older ones, they are scaled. And of course they have their normal claws and on the front and the back with tails. And of course like the whiskers that they have as well.
So the silver spiral void
Mm-hmm.
and the golden spiral celestial dragons were the first top tiers created in Hanova?
The prismatic dragons
Prismatic.
and the void dragons and then the light dragons that I'm about to speak about are all top tiers.
Okay. Okay.
So
Alrighty.
the next one is the light dragons. They are also a first tier creation because they come from directly from the Immortal Seven of the Golden Spiral. And these are kind of like the twins to the Void ones, where they are almost of like pure light. So they're again an Asian style with the scales and the whiskers. But they also are, it's really hard to describe. They have a horse-shaped body. So like if you imagine a horse that got turned into a dragon, so they have a little bit of the longer torsos, taller legs, and with the claws. And I still have to find a picture of this that even kind of represents them, but they have the whiskers that come out, and they have a longer kind of neck with the manes going on, but their body emits light, and they are almost 100% gold in their scales and their manes, everything, even their eyes. But
Fascinating.
they,
And do they ever come to Earth?
not that I'm aware of. I don't
Okay.
blame them, but do
Okay.
not blame them. These ones have the ability to take the golden spiral, which is the giving energy, and to manipulate it to create the new molecules and the frequencies of creation to make, like the planets and plants and all this other stuff. So even like the gases of the nebulas. And they are also part of the Dragon Creator Council up there to help monitor and maintain balance and laws and rules that the Immortal Seven have abided by. Or not abided, but set down to be abided.
Okay.
And those guys can get pretty big too.
Wow.
And then we also have what I call prana essence dragons. And prana is chi, it's life force, it's everything that is the base frequencies of energy that make up everything else. And unlike most of the counterparts of these dragons, these ones don't really have such a tangible form. You will see like almost a ghostly outline basically of energy of these dragons. Um, because of the way that they are created, they have the ability to manipulate just energy itself. And they are also first tier creation, and they are also part of the high tier Dragon Council in Hanova to help maintain the balance of everything. So you get all of these, the prismatic dragons, the void dragons, the golden spiral, and the prana dragons. And I know that the golden spiral and silver spiral dragons seem to be able to manipulate quite a bit. But these prana dragons, they're like the prismatic. They can control both the golden and silver spiral at the same time. So they just help balance out everything, which is really nice. As for the breath weapons, quote unquote, for all of these, like, it's very difficult because the golden spiral and the silver spiral dragons, they can breathe the element that they are, so like the void dragons would have gravity, basically. Like for the black holes, the golden dragons would almost have like a white hole, just white nebula prana spew of things. Not so much great for defense, but these are for creation and for recycling. And then the prana essence dragons would be pretty, along with the prismatic dragons, is just going to be like beams of energy for certain things. So
these dragons are first tier, second tier, third tier creator beings who spew forth creation.
So all of them are made from the Immortal Sevens themselves. So they're not creators. You have to take a test for that.
Okay.
But they are from creation of a high tier that are basically the councils themselves. For the dragon councils are basically to help oversee the laws, oversee creation, to help with that. But they don't necessarily create templates themselves, but they help create and maintain the balance of the ebb and flow of creation, of creational energies, I should say.
Okay. Fascinating.
Now we are going to get into a creator
Okay.
and I giggle at that extensively. So this person has a lot of stipulation around her, but she is a wonderful being once you get out of certain stereotypes, and that is the dragon goddess Tiamat.
Uh-huh.
So Tiamat is a third tier creator in Hanova. She is a 7-headed dragon, and each head represents each of the elements of the Immortal Seven.
Whoa. Sounds powerful.
She is very powerful, and she can be a little bit moody at times, but she is also very kind. She can also be very generous. She is not the evil being that everyone says she is. I mean, she's from Hanova. In Hanova, you can't exactly be evil. Like there's no law. You have to follow the laws of one. It's not a free will universe. You have to abide by everything. So she has gotten the title of the mother of all dragons, because she actually creates quite a bit of the dragon templates, um,
Mm.
for a lot of the creations, which is nice.
Now, this is kind of a silly question. Do the 7 heads uh, give her 7 times the amount of work, or do they give her multiple personality syndrome?
That would have to be a question for her. I don't know. Like I have met
They're a
Tiamat.
little moody.
Like I have met Tiamat, and like if you think about hydras, like there's always that special one that just is a little slow and behind. And I feel like maybe that's the one where she doesn't have coffee in the morning. It's just she's not fully awake yet. And everything else is like, I feel like for when you have that many heads, each one represents a personality trait.
That's what I was thinking. Like, whoa, that'd be a work. Now, also, Tiamat is the name of one of our planets we had. So,
Mhm.
is it named after her? Did she create it?
So I'll go into that one in a minute.
Oh, okay.
So in Hanova, Tiamat is a very well-known creator. She does, again, a lot of the dragon templates for the creations. She's not the only one, but she does create a lot of them for Hanova, and a lot of those templates are used in other parts of the multiverse. So, you know, the dragons over here and the dragons over there and the dragons in our universe and the dragons over here, you know, a lot of them are still to this day, a lot of dragons know who she is, and there is this spirituality. I wouldn't even say religion, although some of them have turned it into a religion, but there's a spirituality about her. You know, she is the teacher, she's the giver, she's the life bringer. And so a lot of dragonkin, draconians, and a lot of um dragon culture has her in it.
Hmm.
But she also helps to guide a lot of the dragonkin in the multiverse, and, you know, setting down the rules and how things should be. Uh, Not every universe has the same outlook on her, obviously. So, as with a lot of the dragon cultures, the draconians here in this universe, uh when this planet before or should I say when this planet was a ginormous planet, like 3 times the size before it got hit by Nibiru and cracked into all sorts of directions, this planet was inhabited by draconians, and they did name it after Tiamat.
Okay, interesting.
She is also documented in the oh my god, I can't talk, Sumerian lore,
Yes.
and she was brought out to be this really evil being, but if you really read the full context of everything, like, these people went in and slayed her with really no relevance. You know, they're like, oh, heroes, yay, blah blah, but it's like there's always 2 sides to one coin. Or 3 sides, I should say,
They,
to one coin. So, you know, but she was considered really evil, and, you know, every creator, every deity has their moments. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying, you know.
was she killed? You said when they tried to slay her?
If I remember correctly, I do believe she was killed. Yeah, because they ended up killing her mate, and then she went crazy. Go figure. And then, you know, started kind of going on a rampage, and I do believe that she ended up getting killed eventually.
Mm. But she still exists on Hanova.
Oh yeah, yeah, she's still very alive and well in Hanova.
Okay, fascinating. Okay. So those are,
So
go ahead.
So most people on the lores here on Earth say that she only has 5 heads, but for those who can actually see at higher frequencies for the other 2 heads, uh, knows that she has them. And I've only come across I'd say 2 people on this planet that have actually known that she has more. So I was like, you know. So with her head representing every Immortal Seven's attributes. You know, so you have hang on, let me go to the attributes here. There we go. So you have, this is not what they call it in Hanova, because you have like plasma, you have liquid, matter, wind, or gas. You
Prana.
have prana, void, and light. Those are the 7 elements. You know, so her heads are going to be white, black, um, red, blue, kind of a beige color. What did I say? Red, blue, and then green, and then the other one is like a kind of prismatic-y iridescence.
And the prismatic iridescence represents what? Prana?
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
Even though everyone's like, well, that should be light. Well, it's white.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Okay.
do each one of those have their own breath weapon? Absolutely.
Oh. And what are examples of breath weapons?
So, like the definitions or just hers?
Just examples of different dragons' weapons and what that means. Yes.
Okay, so breath weapons. Everyone's like, oh, all dragons have breath weapons. No, that's actually not true, but it's close. Um, Most breath weapons actually comes from the ability of genetics that a dragon has. Like my celestial dragon species actually has like a lung that is physical, that kind of creates this weird goopy grossness stuff that I can projectile out, and it literally sets on fire even in outer space, and it is very hard to put out. Uh, some of the void dragons, obviously, their breath weapons come from the ability to manipulate energy around them. A lot of the elemental dragons have this. You know, the prismatic dragons, the void dragons, the light dragons, fire drag like elemental dragons of fire, where they are just pure essence. They don't really have a physical form. So, you know, a lava dragon that is can come out of lava, that is made out of lava itself, is an elemental dragon, but you know, there's anatomy that is going to be there. So those ones would have to be able to have, you know, actual sacs and or produce some sort of chemical to do so. A lot of the dragons here on Earth that are the primitive dragons had that as well, including some of the wyverns.
Are there forest dragons on Hanova?
Yes, there are two that I remember. Now remember, this is just the ones that I remember being there. Okay, like I don't have all of a gazillion years of memories of being in Hanova. So there are forest dragons. The first type of forest dragon, I'm going to have to draw you a picture
Okay.
because they're really pretty, and they're awesome. They're also really hard to describe. So the first forest dragon in Hanova is a very graceful, very unique body structure. They have a very elegant tone to them. They have a longer neck, longer torso, and the tail to them, but it's the kind of their head reminds me more of a seahorse than anything, where it has like the build part right here of a horse, and then it just tapers down into a small, like not really trumpet, but like a small mouth thing. And they do have a small mouth at the end of it. It's not like the whole thing goes like rah, like an alligator. But they are covered in a long fur, and they're green. They're forest green, and they have eyes like, I would say that they almost have eyes closer to slightly off to the side of their head versus straightforward. But they have very long, slender limbs, and they're very much pointed uh, towards the ankle area, but they have claws still like a normal dragon. And they're just like the most coolest thing ever. They have antlers that is made out of keratin, but it looks like it's made out of wood. And they come up and they look like actual antlers, which is pretty cool.
And what is their function?
I have no idea.
Oh,
They're just really pretty.
but they were created from what tier are they, or do we know?
I have no idea what dragon made them, or Immortal 7 or Creator made them. I have no idea what tier they are. They're just super cool.
Okay.
I know that they live in the forest areas in Hanova. We do have planets in Hanova with all sorts of terrain. Um, and the forests are very, very pretty, and the one that I saw that in was a very lush area.
Now, do you have any like I don't know what we would call them, hybrid, like you're a dragon fae with other genetics too. Would they have dragons that are fae or partially insectoid or anything like that? Are there other types of dragons like that?
Yes, I do know that there is a bird dragon species up in Hanova as well. They it's weird because they're like a bird bipedal humanoid dragon species. I don't know the name of them, but they're very interesting because they don't look dragon, but they have like feathers on them and like the head crests and everything of like the birds and stuff. But they also have like fur on some of their areas.
Isn't there something called the Christic dragons also? Christos dragons?
Yes, so the Christic dragons are part of a dragon creator council. They are not from Hanova. They are from a couple universes down from Hanova. So they're very old, very ancient, very powerful. And there are three different types that make up the order. I believe that they're called the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order, and that is the blue dragons, the gold dragons, not the same gold dragons as the ones from Hanova, don't get those ones mixed up, and then the purple dragons. And I'm not really allowed to talk about much more than that.
Hey, all righty. But they're very high tiered, right?
They
Okay.
are, all things considering, they're not Hanovian, but they are very high tiered. So
Okay.
if you have Hanova over here, and say like it's the center of a galaxy, and Hanova's closed off from everything else for safety reasons, obviously. And then if you move outside of Hanova, just outside of Hanova, we're pretty sure that they came from just outside. We're all the way over here at the spiral over here.
Okay.
Way off in the way that nobody knows we exist. So
So there is truth that the closer you are to the center of the universe or to Hanova, the more evolved or more light you are. Is there truth to that?
I would not say evolved
Oh,
or enlightened, but I would say that it is, you are closer to source for sure. And so the experimental universes, which is one that they would have came from, because anything outside of of Hanova is an experimental universe, they probably have a lot more laws closer to the laws of one that they use in Hanova than the side trailed off the road lost in the woods universe that we're in, where the rules kind of got tossed out the window during the travel. So
oh gosh. Okay. So now I understand that dragons, you mentioned a little bit about it, but does each dragon control its own element, for instance? Are there elemental dragons or how does that work?
there are dragons who are made of pure elements, pure like crystalline dragons. You've got the fire dragons. What happens is when these dragons are created, they're created from consciousness by an element that they control. So, like wind, fire, water, um, plant, ice. And most people will have a hard time believing this, but when you know how consciousness works and how it's created, the body that it influences and that it can control is no different than energy manipulation. If you're a person who can manipulate fire with just your electromagnetic field, you're doing it with your consciousness. And so when a dragon of this standard is created and born, the concept is no different. It is literally the embodiment of the element itself. And so their breath weapons is going to be the same. Now, these ones cannot generally reproduce exactly the same way as everyone else. They're they're not going to lay eggs or anything like that unless, it's more of like an energetic impregnation, so to speak.
Higher frequency, kind of.
Right. And so these ones would probably be considered what you would call live birth, if anything, because they wouldn't be able to lay eggs. Now, is there dragons that have physical forms that, can survive in ice environments and, have the ability to produce liquid nitrogen and blow on you and freeze you instantly? Yeah, absolutely. But it's difference, very much a difference.
Okay. And
But
do dragons have their own planets and live on other universes as well as Hanova and as well as in our universe?
absolutely. It depends on the dragon and how evolved they are mentally. Primitive dragons are going to be contained usually to where they are, whether they're outer space dragons, that exist in that environment and don't have a planet per se. They just, you know, the space is like the sea for them. Yeah, so they can go around into nebulas and exist there and eat and, breathe, do whatever they need to do. Other dragons are going to have, like some of the primitive dragons here on Earth that have been here. The environment is their home. They can't get off planet unless someone puts them in a spaceship and ships them into space. But they don't have the means to get off unless they go through a portal or anything like that. And, their intelligence level for primitiveness can vary. Either they can be really intelligent and be in a huge society and be, collective with each other, making stuff and anything like any human would do. You're just in dragon form. Or they could be very primitive, that you see in the movies where they want to kill everybody and, burn your town apart. To the elemental dragons, they're I'm going to go through each of them that I have encountered and do a little description and, a little bit about my interactions with them. So the first one is the fire elemental fire dragon. Now these ones again are just essence. You're not going to be able to really physically tangibly touch all of these. So the fire dragons are made out of actual fire. And you will see them in the shape of a dragon. The one that I interacted with and have seen a couple times are more of the European ones, all four legs, grand wingspans. They have kind of more horns running down their face with the long horns on the side. They do have the ability to obviously breathe fire because they can control that. They can, if you are willing to learn from these dragons, these elemental dragons, they can teach you how to manipulate your energy to harness these elements. But they have full control over fire. They can put it out, they can start it. They don't need tinder of any kind because they are the very essence of their existence, of the element. So can a fire dragon burst into flames and water? No, absolutely not. That's not going to work. It might get warm, but it's not going to happen. They also pretty much exist on different dimensions, and can interact with our plane of existence depending on how strong they are to cross the veil. So the next is ice for the essence of the element. They have the ability to basically make it snow. The one that I interacted was more of a Asian dragon. They are more noodle-like. They have not really scales, but just kind of like the indentation of them. They have more of antlers versus horns. They can make it cold. You know, they can basically freeze your water if they get condensed enough. Really, really interesting. When they start to take shape, they look like they're more made out of ice with like the snowfall on them. For the wind dragon, this one's really tricky and you have to be very perceptive in energy because this one does not really take a form. It feels more like an electromagnetic field, but you will feel wind around them. You might see a shape if there's leaves or dust nearby that it can kick up to take shape of, which would be the electromagnetic. It'd wrap around its electromagnetic field, basically, that it is producing as consciousness. Has the ability, obviously, to control the wind itself, which is nice. And then you have water dragons. Water dragons will usually, of essence, some of them can look like mist. Some of them can congeal into, you know, and collect itself for actual water. You'd be able to see and feel this one a lot more, obviously. So has the ability to control water, has the ability to also kind of tear apart the molecules of water as well. I've had a water dragon on missions help me breathe underwater when I couldn't. I fell into water and forgot that I did not have my original body where I could just shapeshift. So I was drowning basically, but there happened to be a water dragon nearby, and I communicated with it with my consciousness, and it recognized that I too was also part dragon, and it came over and created this air bubble basically around me that it could breathe, and ended up creating the water current to help push me back on land. So it was really nice of it to do so.
This was off, not on Earth. It was.
No, it was off-world. This was off-world. I have met water dragons here. Sometimes you can feel them in rivers. They're of pure essence, obviously, and also the veil in the Matrix makes it really hard for them to be shown and seen. But I have ran into a few of them as well.
Are they all different sizes?
It depends on their age, depending on their sizes. Most of the water dragons that I have seen are serpentine-like. They have the little claws in the front and the back. One of the water dragons that I know of doesn't have any legs at all. But it does have the ability for a water breath. Because not all dragons have to have legs. It is not a phenotype that makes it a necessity. So, you know, dragons are usually connected to source in some way. So they have higher chakra system to manipulate the elements around them, usually. You know, they have some sort of ability that can come out of their mouth, generally. Whether it be poison or a gas of some sort or an element of some sort, fire, whether it be chemical or ethereal or, you know, essence. You know, and then body types aren't really so much a thing. Like everyone's like, oh, dragons are reptilian, they're cold-blooded. No, not all dragons are cold-blooded. Not all dragons have scales. Some of them have fur, some of them have hide, some of them have scales, some of them have rock, which I'll get into because we're still going over the elemental ones. Some of them aren't even technically what humans would consider alive. You know, obviously like the fire dragon, the elemental dragons, most humans would not consider them alive because they have no organs. So
So tell us about the rock one.
So the earth dragons are made up of rock. Most people would consider these a form of elementals, you know, the titans type thing going on, you know, where the consciousness itself is manifested in the rocks, because we all know that rocks have a certain form of consciousness and they can be manipulated. Same with the crystal dragons. The crystal dragons are a amalgamation of, can be amalgamation of flesh with rock. And it's not so much chitin or hard calcium as the dragons of flesh themselves have eaten a certain type of rock that just allows them to have the spines and the spikes, but it's also part of their body anatomy. So as for the essence dragons, though, of the crystal ones, like, they are a bit more physical. They are made purely of rock, but they have like liquid going through them. This is from other planets. That is liquid crystal, basically, that qualifies as their blood. And you can kind of see like through them to actually see all their organs and everything. It's actually really cool. And then, of course, we have metal dragons, which are totally like up there in awesomeness. They are as they sound. They can come in different metal types, but they don't hit them, don't punch them, they hurt. It's just punching like real metal. They are very interesting. The one that I ran into actually was it always was in a molten state, kind of like liquid mercury. And he was more of like the noodle dragons, where he had the claws and the feet at the back and very stretched out. It is a very common template type of those dragons, along with some of the European dragons. We see those all the time in Hanova, for some of them, and even some of the ones here, like that phenotype is just huge for body types, in a different amalgamation of everything. The same with the lightning dragons. I've only seen lightning dragons that are what I like to call Asian noodle shaped dragons. So I've never seen a European dragon with the body structure. Lightning dragons are very dangerous, by the way. Don't play with them. They literally, their body shape is literally lightning, like all running through it. Is very shocking experience if you get too close. And they can fly. They don't need wings to fly. They fly basically energetically and psionically.
And so are they for storms, or what's their purpose?
They absolutely love storms. They kind of just exist with a lot of the electrons in the air, so they can come anywhere. Like, they can just appear anywhere. And their breath weapon is not only just lightning, but they can create ball lightning as well.
And then throw it at you.
And then throw it at you, yeah. The crystal dragons are one of the only species that I have found that does not have a breath weapon for being a dragon, which is really interesting. Same with the rock one. Like, they are more into manipulating the environment around them that is rock based to actually, if they have to attack you or anything to do anything with, that's all psionics. They're very psionically based. So they're not going to be like throwing a bunch of crystal breath at you or like, throwing up magma on you. No.
So we know that crystalline is used in advanced forms of everything, including energy and everything. So what's the function of the crystalline dragons?
It depends on their creator, and it depends on their function and if they passed any test. So, because any entity can be on a creator council, but you have to pass the tests.
Okay.
And then we have plant dragons, and these can also kind of go more over into forest dragons, where the dragon type it really just kind of varies. Most of these, I mean, I have seen a dragon be made out of pure wood that has more of the serpentine noodle bodies. I have seen dragons of plant and forest that are of the more European type and or a mix of. These guys are very variants, but most of their body is literally made of like trees and plants themselves. They're very pretty. The fairy dragons I have only seen on this planet and in one of the other planets that I had traversed to. I believe it is Elfenheim. So fairy dragons are very unique. They are also very fragile. Very, very fragile. So they are not very big. They're about small, about like that. They have very delicate wings, like actual Fae do, where it's like dragonfly wings, or butterfly wings, but mostly the ones I've seen have only had dragonfly wings, and they can vary on what they look like, especially since these ones have shape-shifting up the butt. Okay, like these are the ones where you thought you saw a dragon, but all of a sudden there's a flower where it doesn't belong. Their shape-shifting and camouflage skills are immense. So it's very hard and rare to see them. Most of these ones fled before pre-Celtic times, after the Fae Wars on this planet. And I do believe we've talked about the Fae Wars in our last one, or in some of them when I was talking about being bridged and some of the Celtic deities.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah,
just wanted
and when the veil got put up, and
right.
that's when a lot of the dragons and the Fae beings left because they didn't have enough prana, correct?
Right. So they got the warning from the creator councils of this planet stating that, hey, we're starting a new experiment. We're cutting the prana off on this planet to 3.5D, and it's going to be very suffocating and damaging for you guys. Here's your chance to leave now. And a lot of the dragons, a lot of the Fae, a lot of magical creatures left because they could not survive here. It would just cause them to go into madness. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, it was very hard. I really haven't seen throughout my reincarnations even a fairy dragon in a very long time.
Oh, they sound amazing.
They're very cute.
Where did you see one on Earth though? You said you saw one here.
So the last time I saw one on Earth is when I was bridged over in the Ireland areas.
Oh, that would make total sense. Okay.
So,
All
and
right.
then of course you have the insect dragons, and the insect dragons are various depending on what dimension you're on, what planet you're on. Not all planets have insect dragons. These ones are not really so much essence as physical. And uh, having insect dragons is very interesting because they're very unpredictable. Um, they definitely usually have a dragon's hunger when it comes to eating, so they require quite a bit of resources sometimes. And most of the time they are going to have an exoskeleton structure that is very hard because their insides are very squishy, and they don't have a normal skeletal structure that a normal dragon does, for vertebrates. So they require a various habitat in order to be created, and some of them are very durable, and the xenomorphs actually fall into this area. And I knew about xenomorphs when I was a kid. I did have an encounter with one. I don't really remember a whole lot of it, but when I saw aliens for the first time as a child, I had a PTSD attack. So I was like, well, I don't remember what happened, but I know these things are real. I've only seen Aliens 1 and 2. I could not watch anymore, to be honest. It freaked me out. And I don't get freaked out very often, but I generally stay away from those movies. Um, yeah.
Well, since you brought it up, do you want to talk about your experience with the xenomorph that you did remember?
Yeah, so 2 years ago now, I was on a mission from Section 13. One of our employees, sorry, not employees, employers hired our group to go to this abandoned meteoroid rock plant. It's not even a planet. It was like a meteor that they were going to use for mining that's completely desolate. There is nothing on this rock, but in the general area that it was on near and in, they had two ships go dark. They had no warning. There was no, like, only an emergency transmission was sent. So we got sent in. They had no idea what the heck was going on. They're like, there was a transmission from one of the members on this rock that had nothing. There wasn't a mining facility, there wasn't an outpost, nothing. So I'm sitting here looking at the tablet, basically going over the mission with the 6 of us, being like, okay, well, we're going to get dropped here, here, and here, and here, figure out what's going on, just scan the area, find the distress beacon of the body that it was on, and, whatever. We go on the meteoroid planet, or meteor planet. It's all red. There's nothing. Kind of reminded me of Mars a little bit, but a bit darker in some areas. I don't even know. I don't even remember what sector we were in, but we went down there. There was like nothing, absolutely nothing. And so we had to find the distress beacon because it had ran out of batteries or whatever, and it wasn't producing anymore. But we had a general location. And me being me, yay me, I decided to separate myself from the group like I usually do on missions, because if they're going to get themselves killed, I don't want to be a part of that. So, um, I went on my own, and I was like 5 miles, okay, away from my team. Discovered this cave system, and it was like, I calmed in and it was like, hey guys, I found this cave system, I'm gonna go explore. So I go in alone. I have my gun with me and my knife with me, because we don't generally get issued weaponry in Section 13. We have our own psionic abilities, and we're trained to fight aliens. I mean, any ETs really. So we don't really use weapons, but we were granted firearms this time. So I go in, nothing out of the ordinary, didn't smell anything, didn't hear anything. I go maybe 2 miles into this cavern, finally find part of a body, which was the leg. And I was like, well, that's a thing. And it was like, we scanned the planet. There was nothing, or the meteor, whatever. There was nothing on there. No life form, no nothing. So I find this leg that is like from the top of the knee down. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's unusual. Like, no one just loses a leg like that. And so I go in further, and you can definitely, like, I could feel like there was something there. And so I am literally like on edge. I literally turn on my ability to see in the dark, because it's really, really like dim in this cavern. I turned off my flashlight, started using my senses. I had my helmet off, because like sometimes we'll have our full suits on and sometimes we won't, but like I could breathe even though there wasn't really an atmosphere, and I had my actual body. So I went in, I had my helmet off just so that I could like you can't smell with your helmet on, and not all the sensors pick everything up. And I was like, I know there's something here. I can feel it. And the next, okay, so let me explain my night vision. My eyes have the ability to produce light behind them. So I get a few, like 50-foot radius where everything looks like I'm seeing right now. The only bad part is other things can see me too, because my light is producing eyes, and now my eyes are glowing like a flashlight, like a beacon.
Mhm.
And I'm literally like, I could smell that there was something in there, that it didn't smell just like rock, it smelled like bug slash something else. And I'm looking around, and I don't know how this thing even snuck up on me. I turn around, and there is literally a Xenomorph queen, like, standing right in front of me. And I'm just looking, being like, huh. I'm like, fancy meeting you here. I was just like, my brain just was stunned for a minute because I don't get snuck up on very often. And I mean, like, very often. And I'm just like, tilted my head, and I was like, fancy meeting you here. And like, of course, like, the creature is like very telepathic, and she's like sniffing me, and I was like, if you're gonna make me lunch, can you can you like hurry this up? I've got an appointment. And she like tried to grab me, and of course, like, I'm on defensive mode, so I jump backwards and I start, trying to shoot her with my gun, and she was really freaking fast, and I mean fast. And I was like, well, this thing isn't gonna work, so I throw my gun and I take out my blade. And let me tell you, okay, they might have exoskeletons, and I have fought a lot of different ETs, but I'm not joking when I say these xenomorphs have the strength of a freaking draconian. Okay, I've been hit by a lot of draconians, and they're just as strong. I could not believe the strength of this thing. And she just went like this, and I go flying towards the wall, and I managed to, like, shift my weight to where my feet hit up against the wall, and then I jumped down. And she like started running on all fours at me with tail flying everywhere. And we literally duke it out, okay? Like, straight up. Like, I'm glad my speed is really fast, because she would have sliced me apart, or at least tried to. I have fast regeneration. She got me a couple times, like in the arm and in the side, but I just regenerate really quickly. Anyway, she ends up overpowering me and slams me against the wall. My blade goes flying. And at this point, like, I'm having fun. I haven't had this good of a fight in a while. Like, because like part of me was like, why didn't you just off her? I have the ability to create nuclear explosions out of any second, but I'm like, I was just too much having fun at this point, you know? Like, I was in a clone body for this. I didn't really care for the clone body. I don't like having clones in the first place. And when I have that mentality, I don't really care if my clones die, even though I feel it, like, even all the way to this one. But so she slams me up against the wall, looks at me, and is like telepathically like messaging me, and she's like, "You're a good fighter." And I was like, thanks. I'm like, you too. And all of a sudden, like, I feel this energetic, and I've had this so many times. I've had this energetic connection, like, immediately, like, her hormones kick in. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, wait a minute, let's talk here. I was like, if you're gonna do this, at least buy me dinner first.
My gosh, wild.
So she literally like kicks my hormones up. And I don't mean like subtly. I mean like it's right here, right now. And if anyone's ever been not genetically, energetically manipulated by like ETs or anything like that, where they're just like, and you're now, completely full hormones. Doesn't matter if you want it or not, it's happening. She shoves her tongue down my throat, and I feel like, and the weird thing is like, it's really euphoric. There was no struggle on my side, and that takes a lot, let me tell you. um like, it was very euphoric, and your body just doesn't say no. And So she shoves her tongue down my mouth and puts a larva type thing like in my esophagus, and it goes down into my stomach. The minute that this happens, my body is producing, like, not my body, the larva is producing pheromones like a parasite to take over your brain. It immediately connects you to a hive mind in like 5 minutes. Okay. And I tried to throw this thing up afterwards. But after she was done with me, I literally was like, seriously, like, you couldn't have bought me dinner first? Like, there's no romance. And she, like, got up and left. I'm like, what? No cuddles? Like, come on. So I'm like sitting here trying to throw this thing up, and it's not coming up. It like literally will seep like to the side of your stomach. And she leaves. And I'm just still processing what the heck just happened, because I'm like left in a daze, you know? And by the time I understand what's going on, this thing has produced pheromones as a parasite to take over my brain, hooks me to the hive mind. I didn't even know they had a hive mind, but it hooks you to the hive mind. You are constantly in telepathically communication with the queen at all times. And then, so it starts to control me, and I get up and go back to my platoon, my unit. And they're like, "Did you find anything?" And I was like, "No, I didn't find a thing." And I wasn't the one controlling myself. It's kind of like the Avatar project, where someone else is jumping into my body and my consciousness is in the back seat. Okay, I'm experiencing everything, but I can't do a darn thing. And it's controlling me completely. And so it's controlling me of like, oh, well, I didn't find anything, whatever. We get onto the small ship and go back to our big ship. And I hope they learn their lesson, because they did not scan us the way they were supposed to. Every mission, when we return, we are to be decontaminated and scanned for parasites, astral parasites, everything. And they did not do that. And so we get a confirmation that our major ship that transports us back to main base, to where we go back after finishing the mission, is delayed. So we get put on a base with like barracks and everything like that. So we get set up in one of the hub bases. One of the other girls that was in my platoon, I called over to my barracks room, and she like entered and everything. I was like, "Hey, I want to talk about the mission." Well, I ended up pinning her against the wall and infecting her. So the parasite actually like basically crawled up out of me and did the same thing that she did, but it was like this, they're only like this big, and then like it got down her throat. She got infected, and within 5 minutes I was mentally linked to her. Like we could sense, it was so weird, because like our back consciousnesses, like the real us, we could communicate and talk to each other telepathically, but we could also talk to each other's parasites telepathically, and to the queen telepathically, even though we were not even on the same planetoid as the queen anymore. I ended up infecting literally 50% of the base by the time the main ship came back. So they literally were like, "What the heck is going on?" None of it was chest bursting or anything like that. When the parasites of the xenomorphs were like developed enough in the stomach acid, it's because their blood is acidic, and they actually have the ability to projectile acidic, like, breath weapon. They are considered a dragon, a space dragon. The only ones that I knew of that were actual queens had wings, and they're spacefaring. They do not need to travel inside a vessel in space. They are 100% capable of just being on an asteroid or a comet or anything like that and being fine. But yeah, so like I literally infected like half of the base by the time the others came over. We all had to get tranquilized basically, and then they had to put us in med beds to extract the the xenomorph, like parasitical things. And they just, when they're ready, they actually just crawl out of your mouth when they're big enough, and then that's it. These ones do not like destroy you from the inside out, because they want your body so that they can continuously use it to incubate uh, the other ones that they themselves can lay. They don't need a queen for that for these ones. And so they keep you alive, but they had to use the medbed technology to erase all the pheromones out of us so we weren't mentally linked with the hive anymore. And then they ended up keeping mine, which was a really intelligent being, but ended up destroying him because that ain't happening, because they absorb your DNA as well. And my DNA is too OP'd as it is for this universe, so that the hell no. I felt really bad, I was like, well, maybe in Hanova this could work, but not here, not where you're just going to be used as a weapon. That's not happening. So I ended up destroying mine.
Wow. That now, how did two things, because this I'm sure will be shocking to a lot of people because we usually don't talk about your missions overtly, but two things are how did they actually eventually find out? By scanning you appropriately?
Yeah, so when the main ship came back to take us back, because it was a Section 13 ship, they literally scanned us, because they always do, and they found the parasites in us, the xenomorph embryos, basically. And they're like, oh hell no, like that was all red flags, all everything shut down. Everyone on that base, all 500 people had to be scanned before they even left. So even though we only had 6 members of Section 13, they were nice enough to scan the entire base and get everyone treated. So yeah, it was bad.
Wow. And also, folks, the reason why, besides being trained as a warrior, that she has an attitude like that is that those of you that haven't listened to other shows and become technically aware of what medical pods are, holographic medical pods, they pretty much can regenerate anything with just a piece of you and all kinds of things. So a lot of super soldiers like Apollymi get regenerated all the time, or they remove the consciousness out, put it into another body. So these are things, this is why she's so laissez-faire about like, oh yeah, whatever. But that's still an incredibly dramatic experience. Oh my God.
It was very interesting, and I don't get scared very often in missions, but like when I was fighting the queen, the xenomorph queen, it was very, I was having fun, but at the same time, like when she pinned me, like I'm not used to that. I'm used to being on top. I'm used to being the stronger person on the battlefield, and I am, as great as my powers are and as diverse as they are, I am not, the strongest thing out there. I know that. I've gotten my butt kicked several times, but it is very rare for me to find an entity that is so, their mind control for their telepathy is on a very high scale. I'm not used to interacting with entities like that except for in like universal meetings where they can't hurt me anyway because we're under strict law. But being on the battlefield with that amount, I would say that they are almost, that one specifically was higher than some of the draconian manipulation that I've been through.
Now, what arises for me is that instead of, quote, killing you, she was impressed that you were such a warrior and your abilities. So she wanted to put part of her larva young into you because it would mix with your DNA, which she considered advanced enough. I mean, this is just the idea that's coming to me, and then would strengthen and present new DNA opportunities to her species. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, because they are a dragon, they evolve very quickly to their environment. For them, their environment is the host that they inject. So, and this is just one xenomorph that I came across. I don't know if all of them reproduce like this, but this is just the experience that I had. And she could smell that I had dragon in me. So the genetics would actually, again, this is what I'm talking about with, or humans being a very evolved scientific experiment and a breakthrough, because a dragon has the ability to mate with a lot of things. However, because of the frequencies of things, there's some that they can't. Most species can't really interbreed with each other. So if you find a hybrid of a dragon with other species in it, and of course I do have Pleiadian DNA in me too, that allows me to, or allows the larva to infect a Pleiadian now. It allows it to infect humans. It allows it to infect other different types of, well, she would already have the ability to infect any draconian or Draco based, just because she's a dragon. But so it opens up more and more, and they are very selective on who they took. There was more than 500 people at the base, but 500 people only got infected. They're very picky on who they were selecting.
Did anyone do a comparison data on the DNA of those 500 people?
I have no clue.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's not a wild story. I was raised on many books that talked about dragon riders and humans and dragons and humans being chosen to ride on dragons, which I would imagine has to do with something with the human's DNA also. And there's many uh lately dragon rider movies and ones that have been out for kids. So what do you know about actual dragon riders, and what is that called?
So, dragon riding is we're talking like, Nephilim era, uh, and like pre-Celtic era, time frame before the veil got put up. And dragon riding, to make friends with the dragon, to be able to trust each other enough. Dragons do not like being ridden. We are not pets. We don't like being touched for the most part. It's very intimate and personal for anyone to be on our backs or touch us or anything like that. Um, so having another species being able to be comfortable around each other, to have that bond, to fight and battle with each other, as the dragon is not a mount, okay? It is not a pet, it is not a horse, it is, the person riding on their back as a mode of transportation to be a unit with each other. Right. To be a unit with each other, to be a devastating fighting force. So the dragon is always the one in control. It is not the humanoid on the dragon's back. If that dragon doesn't want the rider, they're gonna kick him off and kill them. It is a bond of trust. So
That called, are the riders called dragoons? Is that their name?
there is many terminologies for this bond. Dragoons, dragon riders is like the new man's term. I can't remember the elven name for it. So the first dragon riding that I know of was elves and dragons together. It was very rare for humans to ever be on the dragon's back. The dragons are very proud creatures, and humans back then were a lot more consciously evolved in some ways than they are now. They had a lot more understanding of who they were, their chakra systems, everything like that. So it'd be very rare for a human to ride a dragon now.
Mhm.
But
You'd have to be telepathic with each other too. I mean, that's
there are a lot of dragons who do not have physical speak. A lot of dragons are telepathic and can talk, or at least the older ones. There are primitive dragons on this planet that don't have telepathic abilities. They have their own language, just like any animal does. Excuse me. Just because they don't have the chakra systems to have those abilities. You know, not all dragons are high density creatures. They can evolve naturally, but those ones are a lot more unpredictable. They're a lot more primal, and you have to treat them as such. You can't treat them like oh my goodness, I found this dragon and they're going to be amazing and my best friend and they're going to eat you. So, so, you can't treat them like if you came across a elemental dragon or a Christic dragon or a, celestial dragon or anything like that. For the primitive dragons, I'm not saying they can't be friendly or anything, but you have to take precautions.
The truth of dragons, and that last one on the Xenomorph. Wow, that is like something. You're amazing, and folks, we've taken your time a lot, and we have a lot more to discuss on the truth of dragons, and that people who have been wanting to know, especially around the difference between draconians, alpha draconians, dracos, and dracs, which we will do in the future. As if this wasn't a spicy enough story. The one I would like to do next, which will be lots of fun. So stay with your notifications on my YouTube channel, cosmicbrilliance.com. And I am going to have Apollymi explain the amazing details, as much as she's allowed, of what it's like to have multidimensional relationships, because all of us are multidimensional beings. And so actually we are having affairs all the time. And so in a certain way, you can look at it that way. So she's going to share some actual stories of what it's like when you have two lives, like off world and on world, and how fidelity and multidimensionally or how fidelity and multidimensionality works together. So it's going to be fascinating. The purpose is to expand your consciousness, not to say anything's wrong or right or have any judgment about it. So we look forward to that too. Go ahead.
Just to let people know, it is not just about my experiences. This is observations and getting to know other ET cultures, their workings of their hierarchies and how they perceive relationships, how they go into these relationships, and it's a lot of things.
Well, that's why we're asking you back, because you have so much contact and so many experiences that most of us aren't conscious of having. So thanks so much, folks, for your loyalty and for hanging in there. And um, if this is your first one, God bless you, because
I'm
you
sorry.
you don't know the history. You need to go back and watch some of the more tame shows, we will say, of you understanding what super soldiers do and the technical science they have available to them and how they live. So then you'll be up to speed and not quite as surprised. So, but thank you for sharing that. I think you're very brave, and it's now we know why some of these science fiction movies and games are actually about real life occurrences. It's like that's an amazing experience, and also why you got PTSD after watching Aliens. So there you go.
I had a encounter when I was younger, when I was a kid on one of the missions, obviously, because like I knew what that was as a kid, and I'm like, that's a dragon,
Yeah.
not one to mess with. And then having that several years later, that encounter, and I'm just like, now I remember why I don't want to mess with them. Run as fast as you can.
Yeah. Well, we've just learned of the myriad of dragons as being one of the first creational beings created. And thank you so much for being willing to step forth in your dragon essence, and Faye, and to share some of the real truths involved and how many dragons there are and what's involved. And we will continue with much more. And until then, folks, upwards and onwards, our world is changing for the better. Take care. Bye bye.